Okay, so good evening, everyone. I'm Tanya Elliott-Moore, and I'm the Public Works Director here at the Town of Windermere. And this evening, we're here to discuss the 40% plans of the Bessie Basin Stormwater Project. As many on this call this evening know, the Town of Windermere is nestled in between two basins, Lake Butler and Lake Down, which are connected to the Butler chain of lakes. These outstanding Florida water bodies, dirt roads, and canopy add to the charm of the town while maintaining its rural feel, even though it's surrounded by extensive growth. The Town of Windermere was awarded 2 separate hazard mitigation grants to fund stormwater improvements for both Butler and Bessie basins. A concept was developed for each basin area. Those concepts were drafted to intentionally maintain the dirt roadways and utilize the minimum amount of right-of-way as reasonably as possible to maintain the look and charm of the areas and minimize resident impacts. The basis for the grants is that the town maintain and apply best management practices, or what we in Public Works call BMPs, for stormwater flow and preserve the integrity of the area so there's continued access both for residents and emergency vehicles during major rain and storm events. As part of the process development, staff and the engineering consultants work to incorporate best practices in stormwater management. The dirt roads and the existing widths of those roads are to be maintained as best as possible. The design will also limit the amount of right-of-way used to ensure that the appearance and look of the road and adjacent properties remain as it exists today and mirrors as reasonably as possible what it will look like at the final design. The design also incorporates the water lines associated with the town's potable water master plan. It is more efficient and generally more cost-effective, as well as less of a disturbance to residents to perform this work simultaneously. This project for the Bessie Basin has been developed using a large amount of stakeholder involvement, as well as incorporated a lot of public input from residents directly impacted. John Fitzgibbon and I have personally met with residents on site at their properties and modified the design based upon those conversations and input. This evening, we are reviewing a design that has been built based upon input from those most directly impacted, while adhering to best management practices in stormwater and hydraulic engineering, to not only lessen the impacts of storm events, but to also assist in protecting our gorgeous lake system. I'm now going to turn it over to Mr. John Fitzgibbon to highlight some of the key aspects of our design plan. John, if you will, please.
Yes, thank you, Tanya. As Tanya indicated, we have spent a great deal of time working directly with the residents and our engineers over the course of the 45% design process. And remember, council members, one of the things that we decided was to have a stopgap at 45%, allow us to meet with the residents, and then present that design to you all for review and approval. Through that process, we've been able to maintain the current dirt road widths, while that at the same time minimizing the impact to the residents with swale and inlet locations. I think we believe we've engineered a solution that maintains the charm and character of the town, while at the same time provides a solid engineering solution, meeting the requirements of the grant to improve our stormwater collection and treatment to protect our lakes. Again, I want to thank the residents who've been directly impacted by this effort for your time, support through the process, meeting, and all of that. It's been a long process, but it's also been, I think, a very good process because it does affect you daily in the look. So at this point, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Hal so that he can kind of walk through the projects and show you what we are and where we are at the 45% design. And then if we can incorporate any comments that you all have, then we can actually present to council. So thank you guys very much for allowing us to be part of the process. And Hal, turn it over to you.
Sure, John and Tanya, thank you. No, that was great. You covered everything, Tanya and John. Thank you for providing the history and the context of what we're trying to do. Just want to reiterate that everything that we've done on this plan, we've worked with John and Tanya, and we've listened to residents up to this point. And the dirt roads will remain dirt. They will stay at the exact same widths that they are today. And we're minimizing swale grading to the maximum extent practicable, while not impacting any trees that we haven't discussed. So right now, what you have in front of you is we're at 45% plans. And Victor, if you go to the 45% plan set, I just kind of want to give the residents kind of a look at the plans that we have been working on over the past few months. And so we have 45% plans, which shows, the roadway and the proposed drainage structures, as well as the proposed swell grading. We have basin maps that Victor just showed, and we have, 45% typical sections, plan sheets, and things of that nature. So, this is a 45%. Like I said, it's from input from both the drainage study, and ever since we got kicked off on the final design, which was in late February. We took these plans and we turned them into a color-coded exhibit just for a little bit better ease of reference. And today we're going to be covering, and I'll go over the general project areas, and then Victor will kind of give a slightly more in-depth run through of the streets. But we're going to be covering 9th, Oakdale, East, 8th, and Bessie, as well as 3rd and Magnolia. And so with that, Victor, you can kind of start with just a a general overview of our plans for each of these streets.
Okay. The starting at Main Street, we identified to continue using and optimizing the existing conveyance system and along the north side of the road here. There's as you can see here, what you're gonna find in these exhibits is a legend where we identified existing road limits, proposed swells and sodding, proposed sodded grading areas, and then some retention system, bioretention and rain garden for the most part along the lakeside. But just, these are the legends and you're gonna see them throughout the exhibits. Right at the beginning, we have pitching the road to the north and optimizing and upgrading an existing open swell system. And then the same thing at Oakdale. There's a lot of water that is coming from Oakdale, and contributing to where it currently is draining using the road as conveyance, and therefore bringing sediment transport and erosion to an area of 9th just east of Oakdale. So by us providing that conveyance system, provide relief and avoid the constant erosion of the road and the ponding that is occurring right now on 9th near this area right here. But for the most part, we'll be upgrading the existing conveyance system, piping with appropriate, and basically sending this flow directly through a piping system into a bioretention area. How in this leg of 9th, you want me to go to the details of our system, or you want me to proceed with the corridor?
I think that's a good overview, and we're going to give this overview for each of the roads kind of to this level of detail. And if there's any areas that we would like to drill down on, during the question period, we will. But just kind of an overview is that we're always, we're keeping the existing roads at the same width, and we're trying to keep them at the same elevation as much as possible. And all we're really doing is we're varying the cross slope so that they properly drain to the swell areas. Now, the swell areas that you see kind of in the darker green area, those swell areas are needed, especially further downstream on the downstream end of the basin, just because we're getting a lot of runoff through those areas. But per input with everybody, we've really looked at those and really tightened them as much as possible. And we're not impacting any trees in this area except over by Oakdale and 9th northeast quadrant. But we've talked with the resident on that, and we're going to be planting some new trees in that area. Just those two 4-inch, those two trees in the corner there, that we're impacting. And there's one small palm tree on the next screen, Victor. The next page. Yep, right there. And that is a smaller palm tree. So we're looking at potentially relocating that in that area. Now, in this corner here, we did, so that we had 2 ditch bottom inlets proposed over by this area, but really we only need the one on the downstream end because everything flows left to right. So what we're proposing in the upstream end, which is that there, we can either do a manhole or a junction box. And so that way it can be buried and then you won't see it. But we do need that connection point for the drainage pipe. And we do need that inlet on the downstream, but we don't necessarily need it on the upstream. So that's a change that we can make as part of the input that we received since we started this process. One last thing I'd like to mention is the area in light green. That 3-foot area is really just a grading area that we're using to harmonize the road with the existing ground. So, as we're pitching the road in different directions, we'll have slight elevation differences. So the light green areas is just meant for us to be able to go back and match existing, and then we're going to sod that, to match existing condition. One last point in this area is that the intersection at East Boulevard, there were some safety concerns, and I've worked with John and Tanya to come up with a T intersection configuration that you see here. So basically the goal of this is to slow people down for safety coming around that curve. And we're planning to have a 3-way stop control for that T intersection. And this is just an option that we came up with working with staff, John and Tanya, and it's something to consider if you want to add this as part of the project. Any impacts would be to the east. That brown shaded area is the new dirt road area footprint. And so that would be, towards the park area. So with that, I'll let Victor continue up on East Boulevard, but just keep in mind those things that I've said kind of apply throughout the entire exhibits. Thank you, Victor.
Okay. So moving on to East Boulevard, we're maintaining, other than the slight adjustments at the T intersection, we're maintaining the same alignment as existing the road has. One thing that we're doing here is that our water quality and treatment prior to discharging to the lane will take place on the right side of the road, as you can see here with the hatching. There will be retention systems that we will design as bioretention or rain gardens. And this will be part of the next phase of the project. But these will be the areas where these treatment systems will be located. One thing to point out on the system is that we coordinated with the town to determine, what the extent of the impacts to the spine trees, and the thing was decided that these were okay to impact, so we'll be removing all these pine trees along the right side of the road.
Yeah, and Victor, just as a comment to that for the general public, that I've had our town arborist out. He's looked at them with the pine borers and some of the other stuff. So what we're going to look at is as a tree replant beyond the limits of the swale, and those trees are definitely on the decline and probably not good for the town. So we're going to look at we'll work with the tree board on alternative solutions.
Good. As we move to 8th, we have these existing retention pond that will be upgraded. This is another potential rain garden opportunity here for providing water quality to the lake. We will be regrading it and bring it up to be more efficient as far as water quality goes. There's a lot of siltation occurring, and continuous maintenance of these stormwater management facility. As you can see here, if I can go to the next page, as we move to, I think that this will stay on 8th here. There's a currently existing pipe system with curb along this edge, the lake side of the of 8th, that will be adjusting and reconstructing. to be able to send water into this retention system. Again, this will be another segment of the project where we are maintaining the existing edges of the dirt road. So very minor adjustments to a roadway portion, but we will have to regrade. We will have to reconstruct the storm sewer system there to provide that upgrade. Moving on to the next, to the Bessie leg of the project. An improvement that we're making is we are realigning the road here. You're gonna find some brown here, shape here, to move the project away from these parts, the road away from this parcel. So there will be some geometry. However, how I was able to fit within these these big trees, large trees, and the right-of-way line to avoid impacts to the parcel and to the trees. One thing that we were able to identify is that this maple tree that we could not avoid to impact is also one of in the list that they're in poor health, and so we will be impacting this maple tree right here.
So with that, Victor, basically here we had to realign the road around the curve to get it all within public, within the town's right of way. And so really my goal when I did this was to get everything within the right of way. And then really what was of importance was to avoid those two large oak trees, which are being saved in that corner. And then with the maple tree, John has coordinated with the property owners in the area, as well as an independent town arborist. And so there are issues with that tree. So we're proposing to remove that one tree in order to get the alignment entirely within the existing right of way.
Okay. The another observation to make here on this leg, we are this basically the basin boundary right at 7th. What we're doing here is crowning the road all the way to where the curbing begins, and then basically start collecting water prior to where a significant amount of runoff to where we will create another opportunity for either erode the road or leave water leave the public right of way into private property. So we are addressing the storm sewer here when it's become significant amount of flow prior to becoming an issue, and then collecting it along our new storm sewer system into that detention area prior to discharging into the lake. I think there were conversations about the property owner here has implemented some humps and berms to avoid a previous discharge issue into his property. So we made a revision to avoid any improvement he has made by holding the edge of pavement on this side of the road and avoiding any kind of reconstruction to the driveway that he had placed there to prevent flow from going into his parcel. So that's with this linear segment. I just gonna go back to Oakdale. This is something that we added to the project. This is there's a low area south of Oakdale. Let's see if I can bring up a map here. So we are on 8th, right in this area of Oakdale. Sorry, 9th. 9th in this area south of 9th on Oakdale, where there's a low area, and there was really no opportunity to buck grade and send to 9th. but we were able to provide basically a retention system here to address the minor storm events, to provide some retention and kind of prevent some of that issues with water going off of the public right of way. So the town right of way. So we were able to do this here. And then there's a clip here of match line basically of north of 9th on Oakdale, where we just showing the optimizing and upgrading of the existing the open swell system that is there. So we just wanted to make sure that we show all the project limits here. And in Magnolia and 8th, a lot of water. I think there's an inlet here and a swell system that is not being very effective right now. So we will be working on minor regrading of the road to basically grade to drain to the appropriate system here. So we adding, make sure that everything makes it to the swell and the inlet that it's currently there. And also there's a lot of siltation that is coming into the system and clogging it and creating frequent maintenance. We'll be upgrading this system here, kind of preserving this berm elevation that is here, and then provide some kind of like a sediment basin catch, easy to maintain instead of clogging all the pipe system that was previously installed along 8th and Magnolia. So that's some upgrades within the right of way, very little intrusion. And then we have another portion of these improvements at 3rd Magnolia. John, do you want me to present this, or you guys want to introduce these improvements first?
So 3rd and Magnolia was not part of our study, but it is part of the grant funding, actually the same grant funding as Bessie 8th and 9th. So as part of our 45% design, our scope was to take the same approach that we did on Butler and Bessie to alleviate some of the erosion and flooding issues along 3rd. And so this is the first time that you all have seen this 45% design. So we'll go over it briefly and we'll have plenty of time for questions. But basically, kind of the same principles hold true for this as we did for Bessie. The existing road width stays the same. The elevations are relatively the same, minus some minor cross slope corrections, and in areas where we may need to raise the road up a little bit. And then we're also using swales as minimally intrusive as possible. And we are impacting a couple of trees, which we want to talk to you all about, but we really have tried to minimize our impact as much as possible. So with that, Victor, this part of the segment goes from Main Street over to Lake Down. And so we just want to introduce this design to you and have your input for tonight's call. So go ahead, Victor.
Yeah, so first I want to just kind of identify the problems and why these improvements are needed. There was considerable water coming from west to east into this Magnolia and 3rd intersection, and there being flooding reports just east of this intersection. So what we did, if we took a look at how much water, where is the water coming from, kind of did a study of and how to best convey this water and properly treat it prior to the lake without creating all these flooding situations. So the issue was basically prevent during storm events flooding that occurs at this intersection on each quadrant, as well as downstream of the basin, which is near the lake. So based on that, based on addressing those issues, we looked at the upstream of the basin. We identified that this wind water concentrate up to a point for us to be able to handle it and route it and with an open system and a combination of swells and pipes here. So we have this is Oakdale and Third. So we begin our system here with a swell and a side drain pipe under the driveway. We will be able to crown the road to here to maximize this. There's some existing depressional areas that we'll be upgrading into as well. And because we have a pipe system, we'll stay quite shallow there, but there was opportunity to improve the profile here to basically make sure that those swell systems are very shallow, you know, within a foot of the elevation of the road, basically. And then, so by us directing the flow into a system, so I think once the water gets into Magnolia and Third, the goal is to route the water into along this side of the road into a retention area that will provide treatment prior to discharging into Lake Down. So the essence of the project is to maximize the soil systems out there, route the system underground where they are an issue, avoid by this holding the collection system on this side, additional runoff draining to this quadrant of the intersection, and obviously treat it prior to the lake. The other improvement we're making is a lot of the water that is concentrating in the right of way on this quadrant of intersection now will be into a pipe system that will again send the water down to the new retention area here. As far as the addressing the impacts to this area, we are aware of some of the park features here. We met with the town to be able to identify the best configuration of the retention area to be able to relocate some of the park features out there. So this is basically the shape. Just to let you know that it looks like the right of way here is or the town right of way is here from red, obviously the road, and then the portion of the lake here. So if there's anything that I missed, I think you mentioned the 3 impacts. There's one tree that will be impacted here due to the improvements here. And I think
yeah, I mean,
it,
those 2 trees were very hard for us to avoid because that is the downstream area of the basin. So we're getting a lot of runoff, and they are, they are right next to the road. So there wasn't an ability to skinny up the swale a little bit. So those are the ones that we're looking at possibly and potentially impacting with these improvements, those 2 trees along this road. But that is the general overview of the project in its entirety, both 9th, 8th, Bessie, and 3rd and Magnolia. And so with that, I'll turn it over to you, Tanya, and we can answer any questions as they come in.
Sure. I'd like to thank Hal and Victor for going through that. I know it's a very detailed engineering plans, and they've kind of gone through the whole project and shown you what that looks like. What I want to remind you is what they're doing is we're redirecting water, trying to keep it as much as possible off of private property, trying to keep it from tearing our dirt roads up too much, redirecting it into swales, which captures it. Then we're conveying it, and then we're treating it so it doesn't cause as much of an impact to our lakes. So that's the broad overview of everything they've tried to do within this plan. So with that, I'm going to open it up to John. Unless you have anything, I'd like to open it up to residents to ask questions specifically now. And you're on mute, John.
Sorry, great summary. And just open it up to residents and hope that we've developed a plan that everybody feels comfortable with, that we're not impacting the charm of the town while at the same time protecting the lakes.
Okay, so is there anyone who would like to make a comment or ask a question this evening? You can raise your hand, I believe, in the Zoom application, and we can go to you.
Tanya, I have a bunch of questions, but I want to wait for the residents to ask first,
Absolutely.
or I can just start throwing them out. I don't know.
So Miss Nancy Nix, it looks like, is raising her hand.
Yes.
So what's your question, ma'am?
I'm just curious, on the maps, you have little red star-like, little blue star-like things. I didn't know what that stood for. I couldn't see anything on your key to say what that meant. They're like little blue.
Are those trees?
Yes,
Is
those are.
that for trees?
Yes,
Yeah.
so those are surveyed tree locations with the diameter size.
Okay, because it looked like a star in the maps that I was looking at. Also, I guess maybe I've missed some meetings. I got spoiled with Bob McKinley's emails telling me when there were going to be workshops, because I haven't spoken with anybody. I live at 303 East 8th Avenue, so I'm at 8th and Magnolia, where Magnolia dead ends on 8th. And I didn't know there was I already have a swale all the way across the front, but I didn't know I was going to have it wrap around and have it on the side of my house as well. And I just thought I would like to talk with somebody at some point in time about that.
John and I can come out.
Yeah, can you go to 8th and Magnolia? And let me see what Miss Nix is talking about.
That one right there. See, I already
Yeah.
have an existing swale that goes all the way across the front of my house.
Yeah, and Miss Nix, I think that's the one. I think what the idea there is to improve it and put it back to how it used to be. But we can actually meet with you and show you what we're talking about doing. But it's not, a swale, remember, it's just a very shallow thing. What we're trying to do is take some of that old infrastructure that we put in years ago and make it work for you, and in hopes that it helps with your driveway and some of the improvements on that. That's the two-story duplex, correct?
Yes,
Right
it
there.
is.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what we're trying to do is help you with some of the flow coming off of Oakdale to recapture what used to be a couple years ago when we actually put that infrastructure in. So it's kind of more of a reestablishment thing than it is a major impact to you.
Okay.
Nancy, yours is really, really deep. And I think our intent is to make it more able to maintain, because when I went out there last time with you and took a look at it, again, it's very deep, but it doesn't hold a lot of stuff, but it's going to be flattening that out.
Yeah, well, I actually was going to say that the last time I spoke with anybody was when you came and walked the roads, and you did remark that that's deep. So the one that wraps around the side is not going to be as deep.
Yeah, the intent is not to follow what you have on what would be the south side of your house running along 7th Avenue or 8th Avenue, excuse me. Yeah, this is really more of a transition swale to try and allow that structure to be effective, if that makes sense. So as we look at regrading the road and pushing it more away from your home, coming down Magnolia Street, it's really more of a transition swale for you. So it kind of begins super shallow and then gets to the bottom or the top of the grate inlet elevation. So think of it that way, like where it's almost zero at your driveway and then at the elevation of the top of grate to help draw the water off the street into that inlet versus your driveway.
Okay. And am I reading this correctly, that the swale is going to be 14 feet wide? I guess the sodded area is 3 feet, and then the swale is going to be 14 feet wide.
That is correct. And the reason why it's a little bit wider is because we're trying not to make the swales deep to look like ditches. We want to make them gradual looking swells so that it's just a slight depression area. So yes, so there will be 14 foot of grading, but it'll go into a gradual sloping swale.
It'll look more like a yard than anything else, Nancy. And then in addition to that, we're going to be improving your view of the lake by creating that rain garden and eliminating that vegetation that's on that intersection.
For that, I thank you, Robert.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, and Nancy, I know it looks wide, but the wider the swale, the less the slope, the less the deepness. And so it looks more organic. to your yard, then it does look like a ditch in front of your yard. And so
I
that's
see.
why we look at widening swales out so that we can reduce the slope to allow it to look more organic
Okay,
to the yard. Yeah.
okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Debbie Scroggins, 224 9th Avenue, and this is not my comfort zone. I'm looking at this map and it seems like in front of my house, I have a swell the whole length of my house, the whole length of my property. I would like if someone could come talk to me about this. I've not had anyone address this, and I was also wondering how large a tree needs to be before it's a tree.
Sorry, what's your address?
224 9th Avenue.
9th and East.
Usually anything over 8 inches is considered a tree, but I'm not sure what the survey indicated as far as what is considered a tree or vegetation.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's 8-inch DVH, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Good. Debbie has some trees, but there was nothing on there about them being impacted, so we just didn't know what was going to happen with her vegetation that was there.
Sure, are you right on that south corner right there?
Yes,
Yeah.
with that long
Let's-
swale, yes.
Let's zoom in there, Victor.
How,
Yeah.
I think there's a very large laurel oak. that's
Right,
in-
that 24-inch, that is definitely going to remain. So we can jog the swell. I'm marking that up now. We'll jog the swell so that 24-inch oak can remain. There will be some impacts to the what's called, you see on the screen where it says the ligustrum, the planting area. There will be some impact to some of that lower vegetation, but the tree we will definitely avoid.
okay, I think that might be the tree that you've already decided was dead and you were going to take out last time.
Yeah, I think that tree was in decline. I
Yeah.
think last time
Oh,
we
is
talked
that the
about,
one that we were looking at taking out?
it's very large.
Uh,
Yeah.
I believe that one is. The one that I was talking about is a tabua and tibucino and another tree that I've got from the town. So there's 3 in my past my ligustrum. So if you're affecting my ligustrums, you're affecting them. I didn't know whether they were considered a tree. If somebody could come talk to me, I would appreciate it.
Yes,
Hey,
John
Debbie,
and I will do that.
Debbie, now that we have the 45% plans, let Tanya and I come down and talk to you, and we can kind of, now that we know, kind of swale widths and where we're headed, let us look at that with you. The whole idea was to, just so when we had the arborist out looking at the pine trees, that one oak tree was kind of like checking out, so to speak, and it could become a potential problem in the future. And I think, Debbie, you and I had talked, and I think we had talked about possibly taking that tree out, but what we want to do is look at how it affects potentially the ligustrums and some of the other trees that you've done with the tree board.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and so Tanya and I can certainly come out, kind of map out what we've got laid out and take a look at that for sure.
Yeah, and I do remember looking at that tree on the field with you, and it did look like it was declining. I just don't know if we came to a resolution.
Well, actually,
on removal.
it was a recommendation by the arborist to actually remove it because it was kind of a safety hazard.
Okay.
That's the live oak that you have in the light blue there
Correct.
on the screen.
Gotcha.
So Nancy, John and I will get with you and we'll come out and visit with you and review this area.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Debbie and Nancy. Thank you for letting us know.
Thank you.
All right. So it looks like, Joe, you have your hand raised. Do you have a question, Joe?
Hello. Yep, this is Joe Tanzar. Let me throw my video on so you guys can see my crazy face. So the one thing, I live at 327 East 8th, so the corner of 8th and Bessie. I'm the corner that's impacted probably by the road the most because it used to be on my property. Now it's off a little bit. But I appreciate the creative geometry that Hal put together there. Definitely looking for obviously anything that's going to take away impediment in my property. I'm going to miss my maple, but you guys said you'd plant other trees to make up for that. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the options are there. My biggest concern here is with that geometry the way it is. I'm already, and I've told Robert this 100 times probably, I'm a big proponent of putting a speed zone around these corners because the 15 mile an hour is not safe around these corners, and especially with all the walkers and dogs and everything else around that corner. Even if the geometry changes slightly, and even if the road is improved, it's still an issue. So there are things with speed zones as opposed to statutory speed limits. Most road authorities have the power to establish speed zones to reflect the safe maximum reasonable speed based on engineering studies becoming effective. So basically factors that affect the safe speed zones, traffic volume, meaning vehicles, pedestrians, and bicycles, which are all on this corner. Roadway design elements, which of course is this geometry, lane and shoulder widths, horizontal and vertical curves, pavement conditions, which there is none. So I just want to make sure that as we go through this exercise, that we go through some sort of study that shows what a safe speed is on this corner, because I'm tired of jumping up and down and asking for help on this. I think you guys did a speed survey probably a few months ago now. Probably didn't find people going more than 15 miles an hour. There were probably a few, but 15 miles an hour is way too fast around the corner the way it exists now. As it gets more acute, I'm afraid it's going to get worse. So that's really all I had to say. I think David is going to talk about the maintenance of the drains, but I agree with that 100% too, to make sure that the drains are maintained because if they're not, then it's kind of useless.
Yeah.
So,
And Joe, just for the record, because I know we've had this conversation with Hal and also Victor and also the transportation folks at Kimley Horn, I think we were actually putting in advanced warning signs on that curve. So part of that plan would take care of that concern that you have as well.
okay.
We actually had
As long as it's enforceable, right? And I know it can be, so that would be great.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Anytime you're putting a regulatory sign in, it is a proper regulatory sign, everything's enforceable.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, next we have Susan Carter with her hand raised, and Bill, I'm waiting for you to the end. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Well, half
Hey,
my
Susan
questions are
Carter.
being answered already.
Susan Carter, 106 Palm Street, and Windermere Tree Board. I have a question about the what do you call it? The bioretention rain garden area on the corner of East Boulevard and 8th Avenue, where it looks like it's going to impact. Are those the oak trees there? And that was new to me.
Yes, Susan. And Victor, I was looking at that as well today. Perhaps we can look at grading the rain garden around those oak trees, because those are pretty big oak trees out there.
They are. When I need to drive by there again, one of them closer to the street might not be in as good of health as the other two, but I certainly know that the other two that are actually in the rain garden area are quite substantial. So I'd like to see us try to work with that if we could.
And I agree, Susan. Let me and Victor go back and back in the office, and we'll look at see if we can grade something around those trees so we can preserve those. So let's take a look, and we'll get back to you on that.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
How there's a little bit of excess volume in there that we were using for treatment that gives us the opportunity to recounter that if we need to. But I need to know which ones are healthy and which ones are in decline, so to be able to best make the contours work.
Yes, so maybe John and Tanya, maybe we ought to go out there and take a look at those two trees again. It's been probably a month or two since I've been out there. So let's go look at those trees again and let's see how they look.
I'm happy to go.
I was going to say, Susan, I'm happy to have you along if you'd like.
I would like to. Yes, please. Thanks.
Sure. Absolutely.
That means I don't have to go.
And then it looks like we have Brandy. She's raised her hand, and then it'll be to you, Bill.
Yeah, it's me and Rick both here. But I'm sorry, my kid was getting a little crazy, so he kind of missed what you guys said about the manhole cover and stuff to the east of our driveway. So if you guys could just say that part again.
Sure, I'll be happy to explain that. If you can go to the previous sheet, Victor.
This one right here?
No, the previous one.
Okay.
I'm sorry, the next one over, my bad.
I was gonna say, I think he was on the right one.
He was on the
but
right one, sorry. I was taking notes of what Susan was saying. That's what I get for multitasking.
It's okay. I understand. I'm doing the same thing.
Yeah, because I want to make sure I capture everybody's notes, so I'm frantically writing while I'm talking. So
Yeah.
we're on the same page. So Brandy, there were two inlets there, which are the ditch bottom inlets that you can see with the grate. We
Right.
need the one that's on the downstream end, which is where Victor's cursor is right now. So
Okay.
that one needs to remain, and we need to grade the swell with the road so that we minimize the swell, because if we start grading against the road, the swell kind of gets bigger and bigger because we got to make up for the fact that we're bucking grade. So what we would like to do is we would need to keep that DBI that's on the downstream end of the swell. But the one that's on the upstream side of the swell is not needed for catching drainage and flow. It's more of just a junction box where we were connecting pipes to. And we
Okay.
put a DBI there just because we need to put a structure in order to connect the 3 pipes that go into that structure. But understanding that, you're trying to limit the amount of visual DBIs that you see, there are 2 options that we can do. The first one would be a manhole, and it would just be the manhole cover that you would see. Or the second option would be what we call a junction box, which is actually just a drainage box that has a concrete slab on top of it. And it's really just used to connect the pipes, and it's underneath the ground, and you can't see it. And basically, but you can still clean the pipes because the other inlets are so close. So that inlet on the upstream end and the upstream end, Victor, the
East.
yeah, the one we're talking about, Victor, the one that we're going to change to a junction box. Yeah, that one we can change to something that could be a manhole. That one we can definitely address.
Okay. And then, John, I know you guys said you guys will get it back to me because some of this wasn't updated from our earlier conversation this morning, but the 3 feet thing, is that part of what y'all are working on too when we're talking about the measuring we did?
Yeah, that was part of our comments to How. So we're going to see what we
Okay.
can do, which allows us, How, if we don't need that 3-foot shoulder in that area, that allows us to push that swale to the south.
Okay, we'll take a look at that. And it depends, John, on
And
how
that's
the
really
grade
just
goes.
about the road design. And again, Brandy, one thing is to understand that the shoulder actually rolls into the swale, so it's not really noticeable. It looks
Right.
highlighted on this drawing, but it's really an incorporation of the swale. So, but that does reduce how deep it goes back into the
Right.
right of way. So
Right.
that's just something that Hal's going to look at from a standpoint of, the sound engineering design. So,
Okay.
but I did make that comment to him today based on our conversation.
Okay. Just checking.
Yeah.
Yep, and we just have to look at the road grades in the area. If we can match existing right at that edge, then I agree. We can probably remove the 3-foot area.
I think the thing we wanted to make sure of, based on our meetings with Brandy, is that we're not impacting, they got the wellhead there and some of the other stuff. So we just want to be cognizant of that during the design.
Understood.
When you go to the other page. Yeah, there you go. Right there. Yeah.
Okay. And then I only had one other question, which we talked about when we did a walkthrough out there, but I think we asked how high you guys were going to raise the road, because I know the grading has to work to make sense with the swales on either side. Am I right that somebody said something about if you go more than a foot or 2, it triggers some sort of DOT thing? So you guys are only going to be able to raise the grade of the road so much?
No.
Yeah, Howard, I just want to say that, we're very careful about how much we can raise it from, an improvement approach. But when we talk about reestablishing the existing profile of the road, there's improvements like we're doing with the geometry on the curves and at the intersections, and there's reestablishing back to the original nature of the profile. So in this one, as we can see, we had a lot of erosion happening in this area. So and this is what you see back to basically connecting the intersection to this control point. And then that's where you see the slight adjustment of the profile, which actually will improve some of the times into the adjacent properties. As far as the criteria, how have you want to talk about that?
Yeah, and you know, Brandy, in the area that Victor just highlighted, really that's due to erosion. The road is low compared to the adjacent property, and so your property. And so all we try to do is we try to bring the road up, you know, so that it's, you know, relatively the same elevation as your property, so that we can grade swales in that area and minimize the footprint of the swale. So that's about a foot right there.
Right.
DOT is not involved in this one because, you know, it's not a state facility and it doesn't affect the funding or anything. What we've tried to do is we've tried to just basically match existing grades wherever possible, so that we're not, you know, having to grade beyond that 3-foot area that I would kind of like to use to harmonize. So really the only limitation of our raising the road is really impacting the properties that are adjacent to it. And I think that we've done a good job balancing that. So we minimize any impacts on properties besides the minimal swell that we need to convey the drainage. So we're looking at about a foot through that area.
Yeah, I think basically, Brandy, what we're doing is we're adjusting the road grades to work with the stormwater system, which is perfectly in alignment with the grant. So as we look at and I know Robert's going to give me a crazy eye, but as we look at the holistic basin, what we do is we try and figure out, you know, so there's going to be certain areas where we're going to have to raise a road, lower the road, do whatever we need to do to make the overall basin work appropriately. And that all works within the confines of the grant.
Okay. And my only other question is, if they do elect to do the realignment of the road by Debbie and Bill's houses there on East Boulevard, is that going to then impact the tree that's in front of Debbie's that's technically on the park side? There's a couple of oaks right there, so.
Gotcha. I think the answer, I'm pretty sure the answer is no, Brandy. If you zoom in on that T intersection, please, Victor. There is that 20-inch on the southeast side, Victor. So we made sure that we avoided that. So we avoided trees with this realignment of the intersection.
Okay, that was my last question. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. So, Mr. Martini, how may we help you?
I think Bill and Nancy have a question first. The Bardos, if you could unmute, Bill. We'll get to them first.
Can you hear me?
There you go.
Can you re-zoom back in on Debbie Scroggins, that long swale along 9th Avenue? My question is, you know, there's an existing culvert off to the east side of my driveway where you have that swale that's put in. Are you planning to reutilize that culvert to switch the flow across the street into that swale in front of Debbie's house?
Sorry, so your property is located here?
Yeah.
I don't see anything on the screen where you're pointing to, but I'm on the north side of 9th Avenue.
Hey, Bill, let me answer that.
Yeah.
For you, because the culvert that's in there, you know, it's old, abused, and not functioning appropriately. So the intent for us is to actually, you know, put in proper piping underground, get rid of that thing that just, you know, is constantly getting filled up, literally bring in new concrete pipe to a new structure that is a lot better to maintain. And so that swale that you see just to the east of your driveway is pretty much what you have there now, but in a much better design with a better culvert system. So what we're really, the intent is for us is to replace that so we don't have Mariana's Trench showing up in your driveway every day.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's our job.
Fine. Now, my next question.
Yes.
Where the pipe goes across the street to Debbie Scroggins' swale.
Yes.
Can that be mitigated? That seems like the longest swale on this entire map, the one that goes along her yard. right where it goes across the street is where she has that Tibicina tree amidst the azaleas. It's just very nice landscaping. Can that be mitigated? Could that pipe that goes across the street run diagonal further down 9th Avenue and mitigate the length of that swale by increasing the size of the catch basins across East Boulevard on the boat ramp side?
Well, I think, and I'll let Hal and Victor respond to this, but remember, all of the structures in the pipe that you see is all underground. The issue is really just building road drainage that just pours into a slightly lowered elevation of a swale to allow it to get into the inlets. So I know it looks like a large impact, but most of that piping is actually underground, so you don't really see it.
No. I'm not talking about the piping. I'm talking about the swale that's there.
Can you zoom in on that, Victor, real quick?
Yeah.
Yeah, zoom in on
this
that.
one right here.
Right there.
Yeah, right there.
Right
Zoom
there.
in on that a little bit.
Yeah, I can chime in, John.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Mr. Bordeaux,
Yes.
you know, this is a relatively skinny swell. It's 9 feet, and we used a skinny swell in this area to try to minimize impacts to the yard. So, you know, what's important is the volume of the swell, because we're trying to convey and hold a certain amount of water. So we could make the swell shorter and maybe avoid some impacts by that driveway. But the trade-off may be that we may have to make it a little bit wider. So I think that we can definitely meet out there and take a look at it and see what's the best configuration for the yard.
But that swale, it pops off into the boat ramp area, to those catch basins, right?
Correct.
So can that swale be shortened, lessened, and be mitigated by increasing the catch basin at the boat ramp?
We could look at
How can I jump in real quick?
Sure.
So these for us to make this larger here, because there's a steep profile, as you can see here, this is basically our treatment prior to discharging to the lake. Because there's a steep grade difference in this swell. This swell is gonna be very, very tight to the existing road. Because of the pipe system, it will be very shallow, extremely shallow. You know, basically enough to just collect this portion of the road that is graded this way.
I'm going to ask a question again.
Victor, real quick, can you make it a smaller to make the velocity faster to make the catch basin bigger? Is that what you're talking about, Bill?
Yes.
Okay, so you're saying make it smaller so it goes faster, but you make the catch basin next to the boat ramp bigger so it can hold more, but it's reducing the impacts to Ms. Scroggins and to Bill's property.
Yes. That's my question. Can the swale on Debbie's side of the street be shortened and be mitigated by increasing the catch basin at the lake? I mean, at the boat ramp.
Yeah, I think we can reduce the width and the length of the swell because of the pipe system. Well,
if the pipe system ran diagonal instead of vertical across the street, if it ran diagonally further down the road, and then so the swale by her driveway would be shortened by, I don't know, 20, 30 feet, and then save her Tibicina tree and that landscaping there, and then be mitigated by increasing the size of the catch basin at the boat ramp. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, so you mean shorten out this way, in this direction?
Up by her driveway, no, not the bottom, the top.
Victor, over
by
station 306 plus 60. So what we can look at, Mr. Bordeaux, is we can look at reducing the length of the swell just east of the driveway in that area. And then we would shift the inlet to the right. And then there's no problem with running that pipe diagonally. We just have to double check that that swale size that we reduce is sufficient to catch the runoff from her, from the length of the road in front of her yard. Now,
Yes, sir.
bumping up the size of the retention system on the east side will help, but it's a little further downstream. So we just got to make sure that we make sure that we capture enough runoff there.
I would appreciate that.
Yeah, increasing the size will help, but it may not solve the problem in totality. So we kind of have to look at the two in conjunction with each other.
Oh, I think the other thing that we can look at based on, north-south impact is that, if we look at the 3-foot shoulder, because right now you're 9 feet plus 3, we might be able to look at reducing the shoulder similar to what we're talking about with Brandy, where we just get that swale pushed right up against the dirt road with no shoulder where it just rolls into it.
Yeah.
It could potentially help as well from the impact going there. So as opposed to an impact of 3 plus 9, it's just an impact of 9 or whatever we need to do. And I think maybe adjusting that inlet that comes perpendicular across at that station mark is maybe just pushing it over a little bit. I think the intent is to not overly impact, what we've got going on there, but at the same time, Bill, we're trying to solve the dilemma here that we got going on for a long time with you.
I understand.
And just want to make sure that one, we got a hard road to hoe. Trying to make sure we're maintaining the charm and character while at the same time we're also protecting the lake. So,
I understand.
but I appreciate that input, and I think that's good input to just try and figure out how we might be able to lessen that impact a little bit, Hal. So we can look at that. And then Debbie, let us know, because Tanya and I, let me do this. Let Tanya and I work with Hal to try and figure out what we can do to minimize that impact a little bit. Let us come back to you on what that net effect could be. Is that helpful?
Yes, that's helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
One more question. This is Nancy Bardo. Did I hear that you're going to keep the existing curb on 8th and Bessie around next to Jim Mayer's house?
No, I think that all gets reworked in this plan, but it's generally going to stay a F-type curb, correct, Hal?
Yes, I mean, the curb that's out there now is not always on the edge of the road, and so it's not really in the proper location sometimes. So our intent is to plan a brand new curb through that area. And the reason why we need the curbing is because we're so close to the lake. And if you go to the next sheet, Victor, we get really close to the lake. And once you get so close to the lake, you can't grade a swale because there would be flood impacts with that. And so in that area, we need the curb and gutter because we are closest to the lake through that area. But that is going to be a concrete curb with a concrete gutter. And with the new base material that Tanya and John have been testing around the town, that also provides a lot more erosion control. So it should be easily maintained, if it's maintained on a regular schedule.
Hey, and Nancy, just as an FYI, that area that you see right there, it's kind of what we call a catcher's mitt in the design. But if you look at that southeast quadrant, there used to be a tremendous amount of dirt that would end up in Lake Bessie. And if you look at where that maple tree is and all that stuff across from Joe's house, that used to be a huge runoff. And quite frankly, if you were to dig down through all that, it's like all old road base since 1921. And so when we the reason we put that curb in initially was to actually act as a catcher's mitt to stop that. And I remember days, back when we moved 20 years ago here, there'd be this huge chocolate plume that just went out into Lake Bessie because of the road runoff coming down Bessie Street, right straight into the lake. So that curb is a huge benefit. I think it just has to be worked and reworked to design be appropriate.
Nancy,
Okay.
were you looking for a T intersection there to slow down traffic,
Well,
or were you?
that's what we were kind of wondering, to slow the traffic down, as the homeowners said.
Yeah, the only problem is looking at, and I've looked at that, Robert, the only problem, and I've looked at that, based on the alignment of Bessie and the alignment of 7th, if we were to do a T intersection, those two large specimen oaks, and if you could put those on your dot, when you try and engineer a T intersection, those trees would have to come out to make a T intersection. So what we've been trying to do through the design process is to give a good ease within the, pull it off. You've got a lot of constraints here. We're trying to pull it off of private property,
Right.
provide the road within the right of way, while at the same time maintaining trees, while at the same time maintaining stormwater improvements, while at the same time maintaining dirt road improvements, while at the same time trying to figure out how do we slow traffic down. So I think we've come up with a fairly decent compromise to be able to try and figure out how we can solve that solution.
You could just close the road. That would help too.
Yeah, or we could just close the road off.
Yeah.
And I did want to mention, because going back to Joe's question earlier, I was not here at the time, but I was informed by an expert that the town did have someone look at that 15-mile-per-hour area, and at the time the traffic was slow enough. So just wanted to mention that apparently the town did have someone look at that.
Well, I appreciate that. I think the question is, what is slow enough, right? And that's where I'd like to have engineering eyes on that.
And Joe, I totally get that. I live on Oakdale Street, and sometimes 15 miles an hour seems like 40 miles an hour on these dirt roads, and so all we can do is advance warning signs and just, be able to enforce something. What we have to do is give the enforcement opportunity to the officers.
Right.
Okay.
I remember, and this is Joe again. So I remember having that conversation with, and I think it was Robert, or it was mentioned on another call at some point, about we couldn't go any lower than 15 miles an hour because of the Department of Transportation in Florida, et cetera, et cetera. And that's why I made sure there's a difference and a distinction between speed zones and between that and statutory speed limits, because those are two very different things. So I just wanted to make sure that's on record.
Yeah, and I think advanced warning signs with curve ahead will help tremendously. And I think that's if I'm not mistaken, that's what you and Mike Woodward have talked about.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So we'll be posting those signs in advance of the curves from both directions.
Thanks. Or you can close the road.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it. So, Bill, your turn.
I got nothing left. All my questions were answered.
Oh, yay.
I'm kidding. I'll make this brief. I want to thank Tanya and John, the Ton and John team, for putting so much effort into working with the residents, and Hal and Victor. We've come a long way, and I want to thank the residents especially because for your input and your time and your flexibility and your willingness to compromise with the town and with the engineers to get this thing done. We've really come a long way since we started on this. I have a question about Tom Fry's house. I don't know if we covered that. It looks like there may be a slide that covers the Oakdale Street in front of his house. I know he has pretty consistent flooding issues, and I just want to make sure that was addressed. I think that was one of the parts that was added on after the fact for Oakdale, a little bit south of 9th. Is that it right there? Okay.
Yes, that's south of 9th right there.
Okay, so that's Tom Fry's house right there in the top of the screen.
Yeah, so Bill, what we're trying to do is actually establish a permanent swale. We've actually looked at sloping, so we've gone out years and sloped it away from his driveway.
Right.
It's super low, problematic because
it's the lowest point on the road, I think.
Yeah, so what we're looking at doing is actually make an improvement to the swale that we currently have there that is effective, and it's actually really helped. In addition to that, we're also looking at the regradation of the 9th Avenue intersection. So in essence, if we can design that correctly, which is what I've been working on with Howe, with all the swales that we have on 9th Avenue, we're pushing the water to the north, reworking that intersection so that really, in theory, the only water that would ultimately come down in front of Mr. Fry's house would be whatever hits from 9th south to Oakdale.
So we'll
And
catch
so-
all that uphill.
Yeah, and so
before
if
we
you
get to
see
him.
that,
Okay,
that
good.
design right now, we're pitching the road 2% to a new swale, or at least deepening the swale a little bit along that eastern side of Oakdale Street.
Right.
So it should be a major improvement to him because his flooding occurs when we have a break in the system at the intersection.
Right.
All the water runs
Exactly.
off of Main Street. And so what we're trying to do through the design is effectuate a change that pushes that water to the north, not to the south, which should solve his problem. So yes,
Okay.
it's been incorporated.
All right, great. Thank you so much. I know that that swale there is in front of a vacant lot. At some point in the future, that lot may get developed, but at this point, I think that's a great solution.
Well, the good news is at the time that lot gets developed, they have to provide a right-of-way use permit. And at that time, Tanya and I and Hal can work with how we culvert that over their driveway access and a bunch of
Okay.
other stuff. So
Perfect. Thank you, John. And can we go to, since we have, this is our first time seeing 3rd and Magnolia, can we go to that? Got a couple questions for 3rd and Magnolia.
I had everything answered.
Yeah. I looked at the other side of my notes. So I know Susan is concerned about the trees, on that'll be affected on that. Do we have any idea of the DBH on those trees or what size trees are going to
Sure.
be impacted there? And would you guys be willing to or available to meet with Susan and myself to walk out there and just kind of take a peek at things?
Yes, so Mr. Martini, yes, so I don't see the diameter of the trees in our topo. It may be on a level that's been turned off, but we can definitely, when we walk out there to look at that retention area at 8th and East, we can definitely look at 3rd as well.
Okay.
yeah, and I think, Bill, when we were out there talking about the initial high-level concept, the trees that we were impacting weren't like heritage oaks or anything like that.
Okay.
And in addition to that, if we need to, we can get Eric Hoyer, our arborist, to kind of look at them. At the end of the day, our biggest problem that we have is the house on the southeast or southwest corner, excuse me, that's super low. And so what we're trying to do is just provide a buffer to that house. That's where they do get a lot of flooding.
Okay.
And I think most of them were like scrappy scrappy maples, things that weren't like super, at least that's what I remember, how from our walkthrough with you and Victor,
Sure.
that there wasn't anything that like, oh gosh, we can't do that kind of thing.
Yeah, gotcha. I just since this is our first time seeing it, we want to make sure.
Yeah, and what one thing that I am, and Hal and Victor have been great at, and Tanya and I walking is, we want to make sure that we're, providing the proper stormwater treatment while at the same time not tearing down trees in our neighborhood that are heritage oaks and that kind of stuff. So
I appreciate that, John. I know you
Yeah.
guys are compromising every single minute on this project, and it's
Yeah.
I appreciate all the work that you guys are doing. I do have there's a on the the northeast corner of that intersection. There's a pretty deep ditch right there. Is that going to go away? Is that going to stay there? I know it's a maintenance nightmare for the homeowner or town staff or whoever cuts that ditch. Is that going away as part of this project?
John, I think the this one has been upgraded recently, so we were not touching this swell. So
Yeah, a couple
what we
things.
were doing to upgrade the situation here is diverting the water into our retention area. So therefore, there will be less water capture and eroding the swell.
But is that going to get filled in, or is it going to have to stay there? Because I know it's I've dealt with this issue with the homeowner and with the town Public Works trying to maintain that. And if it doesn't need to stay there, maybe, maybe it can be filled in or altered, or it's pretty deep. It's a couple feet deep and very narrow.
Well, actually, Bill, one of the things that we talked about and how, and Victor, if you remember our conversation, when we did the right-of-way use permit for that piece of property, when they just finished that, we had them put in the mitered end sections across the driveway with Dean. And one of the things that we did talk about was maybe reshaping that swale. I think it's a benefit to the homeowners for that. It may not need to be as deep and as kind of, it's kind of basically someone went through with a 1 bucket trench kind of thing.
It's like a blade.
I think it could certainly be reshaped to be a little bit better, but my personal opinion is removing it wouldn't be a benefit to them because of the fact that they've already put stormwater improvements in across their driveway.
Yeah.
And it would actually benefit them having it.
And I agree, John. I think it is a deep swell, but it's very, very well defined and it's well sodded, at least the time when I went there to take a look at it.
Yeah.
And the plan is to basically just have it be responsible for that northeast quadrant, which is just that property owner's runoff. And then everything else around it to the west and to the south is going to be captured by that swell system that we have there. So that should ease some of the maintenance burden because it won't have all that runoff that was coming there before. And it would really be there just for that northeast quadrant.
Okay, good. And then let's make sure that we converse with them about the relocation of the park features before, just so that they're not surprised.
Yeah.
I know they're not on the.
Tanya and I have talked about that.
Okay, good.
We are actually going to, build a slight retention area. What we wanted to do is try and figure out how we can work with Parks and Rec to make it more of an amenity piece versus it being just something that comes in and blows out everything that they've already done.
Gotcha.
I think it only impacts a couple of park pieces of equipment, small bench and picnic table. And so I think there's ways to actually make that incorporated into the design. That actually is the intent, because right now we're looking at a high level concept that hasn't been really well vetted yet, but that's certainly on our radar.
Yeah, I know. And this is the first time we're seeing this. Robert, is that little park there? Is that part of the Lake Street Park we've been talking about recently, as well as, or does it continue that far?
It does, based on their overall concept plan, but nothing again has been finalized. I know there's a lot of concerns about an additional trail and what type of aggregate they're going to put on that trail system.
Right.
But again, that's yet to be determined. And with the discussions that we're going to have on Lake Street, Lake Down, and Fernwood, I think that's probably going to eliminate some of those concerns.
They'll be de minimis, in other words.
Or holistically, if you look at all the parks together.
Oh man, that hurts, Robert.
I've been waiting the whole hour to use that one. Okay.
And then he just went on mute after he said holistic.
Well, he keeps teasing you about it, John, but I stole the holistic word. It's mine now.
Oh,
so.
no.
You know how hard it took me to figure out a way to put that into the meeting tonight? Oh, Brandy's got her hand up again.
Yes, she does. She does. I was getting to her.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
done.
Bill.
Thanks.
Brandy, you have another question?
Yeah, sorry, I almost forgot what it was. In front of, going back to Oakdale Street for just a second, for Fry's property. So I just wanted to double check. So in front of my house, the 2% grade is going to be sloped towards the west side of the street. In front of Fry's, the slope's going to be the other direction. So where and how does it transition?
Sure, if you could go to the intersection sheet, Victor. So north on Oakdale? You're talking about along Oakdale, correct, Brandy?
Yeah.
Sure. So we're going to finalize the grading as part of the final plans, but the goal would be to, as we approach the intersection on the north side, is to basically everywhere north of the intersection will flow to the west, and everywhere south of the intersection will flow to the east. So that cross slope transition will occur through the intersection.
Okay. Just was curious on that. And
Yep.
by the way, Fry doesn't have a U-shaped driveway, but you guys have it on the drawing. So I thought there was actually a tree there he's the one to the south on Magnolia just past, or I'm sorry, on Oakdale just past the vacant lot there, but you guys have like a U-shaped driveway on him, and I don't think he has that, but.
Let's take a look.
Sure.
Are you talking about that one, Randy, or the one?
Yeah, whatever's to the right there. He has the driveway on the left. That's on the right. I thought he had a couple of small trees there, but could be wrong. I've never noticed it being a U-shaped driveway, so I was a little confused. Didn't think I was looking at the right place when we were talking about it earlier.
So the red line is the driveway, so I don't see anything on the right side or the.
I think what Brandy was talking about is a double access driveway, but
Yeah, sorry. That's yeah.
yeah, aerials don't lie apparently, but I don't know. We'll have to look at that. But
Yeah, it's all
regardless, it doesn't
Hey,
matter
there-
because we're just going to
Okay.
slope everything 2% to the east.
right. No, I know. I just thought I was looking at the wrong map when you. I was like, that's not
Oh,
Fry's.
gotcha.
So I was like, then I realized the slopes were changing. So then that's why we had that question. So
Gotcha.
thank you.
Okay, and then thank you, Brandy. And Joe, you have a question again?
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're fine. No, you're fine. Go ahead.
So, and this may not be the forum, but what is the
Hey,
timing?
Joe, first thing I want to do is apologize for leaving my truck running in your driveway the other day. Sorry.
Oh, that was you.
That was us, yeah.
I was about to, no one, okay.
I
No,
thought you
you're
were
on
going to
my-
jump in it and take off, but
You're on
sorry.
my list, man. I gave you the glare of death, so
I got you.
I just waved at you.
That's hilarious. All right, sorry, I'm a jerk. All right, my bad. All right, so question on I know that the easements are partially there for upcoming city water. I think I know we talked about that at some other workshop. What is the timing of that, and is that still being considered here as we go over these plans?
I can answer that. We're still waiting on the American Recovery Act monies. So we're planning for it. We just don't have the funding for it. Whether we use the ARA funds or we have to go to an SRF fund, that's still to be determined. But we are looking at putting in potable water systems whenever we do a stormwater project or any project from here on out.
So this does consider where those pipes would be. So it would be in that little easement area, the shoulder, I guess.
Yes, so the plan is that once we get to a design footprint that can be approved by town council, and we are authorized to proceed with final design, then we would look at using that 3-foot area that we've been denoting as our grading area for the road harmonization. We would be using that 3-foot area for the water main placement, and we just have to look which side of the road makes sense from a minimizing impacts to trees standpoint.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then Council Member Sapp, you have a question?
Yeah, a couple quick ones in regards to all the rain gardens. How are they going to hold up, with plantings and stuff with the introduction of sediment? I guess what's the maintenance like on those?
Yeah, how can I answer that?
Yes, for sure. Go ahead, Victor.
Yeah, so we have a team here that works on LID and best management practice, and the landscape architectures that they help us determine what kind of vegetation is the best and most appropriate. And sometimes how we handle that is that we use sloping and vegetation that can hold good to erosion on the slope to provide that the treatment necessary. Sometimes what we use is we grade some of the bottom, even though it's supposed to be flat for volumes. We actually grade it to a sediment sump, so allow for that area to be maintained while the slopes and most of the retention area is getting that vegetation needed to provide that treatment and nutrient loading removal. So at this point, what you see is the areas, but there will be actual design for that that would include slopes, contours, the right type of vegetation, and the right type of nutrient removal.
Right.
So
And Councilman Sapp, I can help you with the answer to that question relative to maintenance once it goes in. So this would be something that our lakes management company Solitude would roll into their maintenance responsibilities. And secondly, we also, as the town manager's been explaining, we have an RFP out there for a lakes management consultant to help oversee that type of work as well. So we'll be well covered in ensuring that these things are maintained properly. And they are considered a best management practice now in stormwater. Bioretention is kind of one of the top things, and rain gardens are one of the top things to utilize now for stormwater treatment. So I feel very comfortable with it.
Yeah, and I understand that, but I
Chris,
guess
in addition, let me
Right.
try and help too on that one too. I think the bottom line is what we want to do is make sure that the catch basins and the sumps within the catch basins are holding the solids. So
Right.
that when it gets to the rain garden and the bubble up occurs, it's just water. So we're not bubbling up sand and all that other stuff, which is what your concern is, where we're bubbling up sand and then the rain garden becomes 3 foot thick of debris. So that's really kind of the intent of the design, is that and then that's where we as a community and we as town council and we as public works have to understand, a maintenance program to make sure that upstream we're, have a good maintenance program to remove the sediment from the boxes so that it doesn't ultimately end up in the rain garden.
Agreed. Yeah, and I was just curious if if you're getting a backhoe in there every few years and just digging the whole thing up and
No,
starting.
that would be futile to what we're trying to
Right.
do, which is establish plant and aquatic growth in a rain garden and then just completely inundate it with sediment.
Fair enough. I guess piggyback off of rain gardens, the one there on Oakdale across from the Fry property. Are we not required, I guess, to, even though it's a vacant lot, to have some sort of ingress egress for access to the lot? I guess meaning, should we be putting some sort of culvert in there now, or?
Well, I think the only issue with that, and we've come across that in the past, is where we pick the driveway location isn't necessarily where the house lot wants the driveway location. So it's much better for them to establish that when they do their plan for the house. And we can control that through a right-of-way use permit.
Understood, but maybe it's more of a legal question then. Are we good, being that we're essentially, as of now, temporarily until they either sell it or decide to build on it and decide where the driveway is, of essentially blocking the ingress egress from the lot?
Is that the Chase property?
I'm not sure who owns it, but directly across the street from the Fry's, the vacant lot.
It's not Chase. It's a different name, but it's not the Chase.
I think the other thing too, Chris, is the shallowness of the swale could afford the homeowner to come in and do a V-shaped driveway entrance. Or they could put in a culvert if they wanted a higher level entrance.
Yes, we do have to provide access.
Yeah, I understand. I think that the depth of the swale will still allow access to the property.
Well, I just had it listed as rain garden there, so
that's a good point. It
Yeah, I
probably
think
should just be a swale.
Yeah, John, I think we just put it as a retention swell.
Yeah, correct. Good point.
I get, this may be, we started getting into it with the end of third there on the third Magnolia project. The ingress egress again for the trail. I know this come up in conversation, but there doesn't seem to be any type of walking path right now. It is a passive walking path, for anybody that wants to go in and out of there. So I guess if it were to stay as it is, I guess how do we propose to get over or around the rain garden?
Can you zoom in on that, Hal or Victor? So I think there's plenty of room on the north side there to actually come around to the park right there when you're down there looking at it. And not to mention the fact that, that we're showing the limitations of the rain garden area. So a lot of the slopes towards the end aren't as dramatic. So I think there's, from a walking,
I guess it's not necessarily getting on a bench there, but heading south on the trail to get over towards Lake Street.
Yeah, and I think Yeah, I get that.
You can
Yeah,
look
we
at
can-
pulling.
Beyond that structure to the toe, to the right of that structure that dumps out into the lake, Hal?
Yeah, we can look at
Got the
reducing that,
overflow?
pushing that west.
Yeah, just push that west a little bit.
Yeah.
But I
so that
think
if
you
you just-
actually, if you look at the way that you've currently got that designed, if you look at where your outfall structure is, there's a little, there's probably like a 4-foot, 5-foot path to the east side of that rain garden that people could walk around it if they had to get onto the path.
Just something to think about. I just didn't see a
Yeah,
way
that's a
around
good
it.
point.
Yeah, maybe we'll give it like 10 feet. We can pull it back like another 5 feet, John, and just have like a 10
Yeah,
foot.
to the west. Yeah.
Yeah, move it 5 feet to the west so that 5 foot becomes 10. So you have some flexibility on how you want to do that in the future.
Because I don't know how often bicycles, go down there and such. I used to drive the bike down there. You just obviously want to make sure there's enough room that, nobody falls down in there. I know it's not deep by any means, but
John could build a little bridge in his spare time.
Out of pressure treated timber.
Right. $8,000 worth of lumber.
Yeah.
And the last thing is just really comment about the speed. I thought we went through this earlier, where all the dirt roads are 15 miles an hour, and they weren't enforceable, and we had to provide a study to even be allowed to go as low as 15 miles per hour. Because is the minimum speed not 20 or 25?
The minimum speed for neighborhood streets are typically 20 miles per hour. So a 15 mile per hour would be a variation from that.
Correct. And we already did a study to make sure our 15 mile an hour roads were enforceable, correct? If I recall, Kimler Horn may have done that.
Yes, I recall the same thing.
Yes.
That's it.
Okay, Councilmember Davitt?
Just a couple of quick questions. So what's the remaining design submittal timeline for the project?
Sure. So once we get town council approval of the 45% design, it will take us about 2 months to have final plans or permit plans, and then we'll submit those permit plans to the water management district for an exemption, as well as the final plans to the town for review and approval. And then depending on the water main, if we're authorized to proceed with the water main design, we would submit the water main to the county as a permit project. So it would be 2 months to take it to final or permit plans, and then we would submit for permits, and then it would just go through the permitting process, which typically takes about 2 months as well. So we're probably looking at about 4 months to finalize it for bid from the time we get approval to go.
Yeah, but with the Orange County Utilities permit, that's separate. So if we need to pull that in order to meet our deadline for DEM for the HMGP grant, we can.
That is true, Robert. Thank you for that. We would do separate plans for the drainage and road improvements versus the water main. So that would be a completely separate plan set. So we could run that on a separate track.
So your permit set's a 90% set?
Yeah, I would say about 9%, Tony, Mr. Davitt. Yes, it's about 9% we submit for permits, and from 90 to a final would be addressing agency comments and any follow-up town comments, on that.
Will we see any cross sections between now and then, Hal?
We have 45% plans that have cross sections, so you can see cross sections now. They're based upon the current design, and we'll modify them for any tweaks that we make as part of the comments from this meeting. But the current 45% plans that we have completed, and we've submitted those to Tanya, and John has cross sections for you to view.
All right, Tanya or John, if you could share those, that'd be great.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's part of Tony, and that's a great question, because it's one thing to show something in plan view, but to understand how the cross sections work relative to slopage is a very important issue in what we're doing. So we take a lot of time looking at it.
I think it's a little bit lost.
Yeah, we take a lot of time looking at profiles and cross sections.
I spent all day looking at those things. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome, Councilman Davitt. And then Joe, you have your hand raised again?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think what Councilman Sapp said may have introduced some ambiguity on the speed stuff. I know, he mentioned that there was, something we had to do to get enforcement of the 15-mile-an-hour speed limit. But I'm told that we can enforce a speed zone around a corner. So I just want to be clear that, are we sure that we can do that or not?
We'll look into that for you, and I'll speak with the chief as well. And we'll let you know, Joe, what the final outcome on that will be.
Okay, thank you.
And we'll speak to the traffic transportation engineers. I like to consult with them.
Okay.
Yeah, Tanya, Mike Woodward and I can help you with that, so we can take a look at it.
I know. So please let Mike know we'll be calling.
Yep.
Thank you. All right. It doesn't look like or appear that we have any more questions. All right. Mr. Mayor, are you still with us? Did you want to wrap anything up on your end?
He actually texted me that he had to jump off, so
Okay.
I don't believe he's on the call anymore.
Okay, well, I would like to thank everyone for participating this evening. We had a lot of resident participation, a lot of council participation this evening, and I greatly appreciate all of it. Truly, we do. John and I are happy to come out and meet with the folks that need us to meet with them in the next week or so. So thank you very much, everyone. And Robert, do you have anything to say before we sign off this evening?
No, thank you guys, and thank you staff for helping me out on this, knowing my situation. But again, it's great to get this public input and get the feedback from all of you. And if you know any of your neighbors that may not know about this project, which, we try to do door knockers, social media posts, so on and so forth, please let them know, and we'll be more than happy to reach out to them and talk to them.
And this has been recorded also, so they can access this whole meeting online, right, Robert?
Yes.
Correct. And
Okay.
we'll be posting this as well. And again, you can share with your friends, your neighbors, and just let them know, we're at 45%. This will go back to town council for the 45% approval. And then once we get 100% plans, then we'll have another public outreach meeting, and then it'll subsequently go to town council for approval for that too.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, and please enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.